A pleasure to meet all at last. Welcome back to films I should have talked about years ago. So for this one right here, I tell you, Pixar's Coco was not necessarily something that would have met every single requirement of mine to basically be a good film by all means. Like I've said before though, I've got nothing at all against this one. But if I were to go ahead and talk about the Transformers Bayverse of films out there, I feel like I'd be doing a bit of a disservice. Yet there is one example out there that stands out way far away from all the others. Because first of all, this was directed by Travis Knight, not Michael Bay. So it brought along a very good sense of humbling hope that we would finally receive in the year 2018. 11 years after Michael Bay's first Transformers film came out in 2007, called Bumblebee. Yeah. Bumblebee, of course, is the reboot to the Transformers Bayverse. It had itself a whole new crew working with, and therefore, a lot of us felt more relieved, yet more hopeful that this one would actually try to make the Transformers franchise a good attempt for live action again. And let me tell you, it actually did just that. It not only made the Transformers Bayverse much better than it used to, but it also gave us a lot more hope that maybe we could be seeing more Transformers films in the future. They may not necessarily have to be Bayverse films, but they could be Transformers films entirely. If they were ones pretty much made by Hasbro, then maybe we could possibly be seeing those in the future. We've certainly got our hands on a lot of Transformers merchandise and a lot of media outside of the Bayverse rolling alongside. But in terms of how Bumblebee works in comparison to all the other Transformers Bayverse film entries, I've already talked a bit about The Last Knight. And as the name does suggest, it actually was Michael Bay's last ever attempt to try and make the Bayverse a great series. It was certainly great for what it was, but man, The Last Knight was almost like pinning a nail on a coffin. And man, is that coffin old and dusty, with you inside it. Whenever you see The Last Knight, whenever I see The Last Knight, it's almost like we're staring into the abyss, wondering who we really are. What we think we're doing is right when it's really not. As James Rolfe suggested, stop seeing it. And by it, we mean the entire franchise. But let's just say that Bumblebee actually does everything much differently. It not only gives us a better wonder about what the Transformers film franchise could be like in the future. There, of course, were hopes that a 7th film would be around in 2019, but Paramount would end up pulling the plug on that, rightfully so. The Michael Bayverse of Transformers are not necessarily met with all of the popularity, fame, and good fortune that we were hoping for. They make billions of dollars because they're good movies in general. The entertainment value you get from them is astonishingly well put together. But if you look way deeper into them, then you can see way more than what you'd bargain for. Especially when you get down to the dialogue in these films. Are they gritty? Are they selfish? And are they not aware of what many things out there are like nowadays? You can look at it in a satirical purpose, but in terms of how Bumblebee works, like I said, everything is done differently. It stars the one and only Haley Steinfeld, alongside other actors like Peter Cullen and even the almighty WWE wrestling superstar John Cena. Yeah, that's right. This, of course, is the same old guy who used to be a huge wrestling superstar, but has since retired and moved on to things like acting, being a game show host in Wipeout, being the spokesperson for Takis Snacks, and of course being an actor in various other films and other media. And I tell you, the amount of films I've been seeing John Cena be a part of is pretty big. Not just with Bumblebee, but also with other films like Playing with Fire and the Doolittle reboot from 2020. So you can say that John Cena's film career in recent years is getting way bigger than it used to be. But if I want to talk about the plot here, then here's how it would go. It begins on Cybertron, literally, Cybertron. The year is 1987 AD, on Earth especially, and Cybertron has an ongoing war between Autobots and Decepticons. This is certainly shown in its amazingly well put together G1 styling, just like in the original show from the 1980s. This really does give us a nice sense that it's almost like a reboot of the G1 series being put into live action. But it's only that way for a short while. Because what eventually happens is that Bumblebee ends up escaping and crash landing on Earth. Bumblebee tries to adapt to life on Earth, but it's not very easy. And at a certain point in time, Haley Steinfeld notices a yellow Volkswagen Beetle and goes underneath to check on it at a mechanical level. But then, of course, there appears the face of our one and only amazing Autobot underdog, Bumblebee, who transforms in the garage and basically scuttles to the corner. So, I tell you, the kind of humor that comes alongside this rather amazingly hot, high-paced, enticing action in this film, it really goes to show that you can reboot a franchise and make it even better than it used to be. This is one of those only rare examples of how it can be done properly. Travis Knight is like the Michael Bay 2.0. And with that in mind, there's a Transformers Bayverse 2.0 upon us. But being that this is a reboot of the franchise, and a reboot of the Bayverse entirely, that happens to have more significance than many others that I've already talked about, actually. But Bumblebee, again, it does things differently. And I know I've said that a lot now, but that's just what it is. It's different in an amazingly well way. And in terms of how Autobots and Decepticons are fighting on Earth in comparison to all the other Bayverse films, you got Bumblebee fighting against a lot of Decepticons out there. Blitzwing, who many thought would probably be G1 Starscream because of the color scheme. Man, that was rather confusing. I almost figured that that was Starscream right there at first, till I found out it was actually Blitzwing. Yeah, Blitzwing finally makes an appearance in the Bayverse. But you also got a few newer characters in there, Shatter and Dropkick. And these characters, man, are they vicious. Decepticons who are looking to find Bumblebee and basically annihilate the crap out of Bumblebee. Man, they do whatever they can. They go as far as to interrogating with the American government, whom of course is led by John Cena in this film. Man, that is just incredible. And the truth is that Bumblebee, of course, was a beat up car who then transforms into a Volkswagen Beetle. So, that's just kind of how that whole thing works, pretty much. But as soon as Bumblebee and Haley Steinfeld cross paths, once again, it gets to be pretty joyful. Having a human friend is what makes Bumblebee more than just an Autobot. A softy at heart, or spark in this case. And the thing is that in this particular instance, where we have an Autobot and a human partner at once. But then, of course, things really take a huge upsurge. Especially when the final battle takes place. You got yourself all sorts of things to look out for. You got Shatter and Dropkick taking on Bumblebee. John Cena trying to help in all senses of the worry, plus many other things taking place. But I really do have to mention the ending of this film. The ending, not the ending that involves Shatter and Dropkick being defeated. But the ending that does, in fact, allow for this to be officially registered into the Transformers Bayverse canon. Bumblebee takes on the form of an early 70s Camaro, which is reminiscent to that of the first time we ever see Bumblebee in the first Transformers Bayverse film back in 2007. So this one right here actually goes as far as to connecting itself with the first film entirely. Of course, this was exactly 20 years before the first film would take place, but Bumblebee being set in 1987, it does actually bring a great way to connect this to the actual Transformers canon itself. The fact that they could make Bumblebee transform back into that same old 70s Camaro, just like in the first movie, is an amazing connection. A great way to seal off the franchise. Especially because of how plans to have the Transformers 7 were completely cancelled. For the right reasons, so to speak. Well, anyways, to top it all off, I will say Bumblebee really does have a lot of impressive merits to it. Not just the comedy and humor, but also the enticing action. You can already get so much action coming out of the other Transformers Bayverse films that it gets a little ridiculous, in a way. It's one of those mere examples where a film happens to be almost too entertaining. Not necessarily to the point of it being overwhelming, but to the point of it being a bit redundant in nature. But Bumblebee, as I've said many times over, does things differently. All for the right reasons. It doesn't have as much action, but it really does give us a lot more things to make up for. Especially because it's a reboot of the franchise. One of the only few ever in more recent history that actually goes and does things the right way. So when I'm giving this one a score, well, here we go. 8.0 out of 10. So as I've said before, it's not necessarily as amazing of a movie as I probably would have actually wanted to see, but it still is great. For being a reboot, an actually good reboot for once. I tell you, there's really a lot of possibilities that you can look at it, but this is just how it's supposed to be done. There's no doubt about it in my mind that maybe we will be seeing better Transformers films in the future. Michael Bay was not really the best call for a director. But if we could have more Travis Knight action, then maybe it could be done. Way better than it used to be. The Bayverse films are still great, so to speak, but they are not for the faint of heart. At all. For everything that they've basically done, you really can see a lot of problems going on. The further you watch them, the more you might want to turn off the television at any point. So, that's just the end of that part right there. But, just a reminder though that I'm going to be having some other things to talk about here. Lots of them. So if you want to see more go down on my channel, then make sure that you like, subscribe, comment, follow me on social media, and stay on the Hollywood side.